I'm just about okay. It can get a bit tight sometimes, especially, you know, trying to get the kids out and shouting at them not to hit the other car door and all of that stuff. So yes, it can be a bit tight. Where I fall foul is more if I have to reverse park into a space. Quite often I will have to say, yeah, my car is just too long for that space, and I just have to keep on driving. And that can be frustrating because, you know, in a small borders town, there's not a huge amount of parking spaces to be had, because the towns here were never ever designed to deal with the sort of traffic that they have now, let alone farm trucks and SUVs like me.
James, are these big cars, are they antisocial? When you've got more cyclists on the roads, you know, is it something that we should be looking at having some sort of maximum size for cars, or is that just going too far?
Well, I think that, I mean, the French are thinking about this sort of thing, but that slightly smacks of central planning to me. I believe that people should have the choice, and then they can decide for themselves. I do quite a bit of cycling. I cycle a lot in London, and to be honest, when you're riding a bike through town, a door is a door. You tend to give everything an equally wide berth.
How would you feel, Ema, if you had to pay more for a bigger car? Would that change your mind?
No, it wouldn't change my mind. I think because of where we live, I need the car. You know, it's an absolutely essential part of our lifestyle. And I absolutely agree with James that statistically I'm no more safer than in any other car. It is all about, you know, my own sense of safety and my own perceptions. I was laughing as James was saying he doesn't see the appeal, because that is exactly what my husband says. He hates driving my car. He calls it the tractor, whereas I love sort of chugging around, you know, in a big lump of metal. It doesn't bother me. I don't need speed or style.
That is Ema O'Hagan, a freelance writer and self-confessed tractor driver, and James May, motoring expert and presenter. And that is The World Tonight. I'm Anna Foster. I'm back tomorrow at 10, but from me and everyone on the programme, thanks for your company. Good night.
Studio direction was by Michael Campbell, and the editor this evening, Jack Hunter. Eilish searches for her husband in our book at bedtime, coming up in just a moment.
It immediately became clear that this was a magical substance that could potentially change the world.
I'm Mark Miodownik, a material scientist, and this is the sticky story of humanity.
These glues form very strong bonds with human skin.
Plywood isn't just about wood, it's always about wood and glue. A new 5-part series, getting to grips with the adhesives that have shaped modern life.
We take a very high-strength fiber, such as carbon fiber, and we put that into a glue, and that makes it very high-performing.
Glued Up, the sticky story of humanity, on Radio 4 and BBC Sounds. Next Monday to Friday lunchtime at 1:45.
Now on BBC Radio 4, our reading of the 2023 Booker Prize winner, Prophet Song by Paul Lynch, continues. Ireland is in the grip of a government turning towards tyranny, but after her husband's arrest, Eilish tries to maintain a sense of normality for her children, as read by Claire Dunn.
Eilish clicks Ben's baby seat into place, and he meets her eye with a sleepy smile, while Molly slides into the front seat, placing headphones over her ears. Bailey climbs in the back and slams the door, then leans between the two seats and studies his mother in the rear-view mirror. "Mom," he says, "when is Dad coming home?" The long drop of her heart. She finds herself looking away from her son, sensing that Molly is watching her also. She turns to Bailey, inhaling slowly, seeks his gaze in the mirror and holds it. "I've told you, love. He had to go away for work." She watches the lie growing out her mouth, Bailey falling back into the seat with a humph, seeing how he takes whatever she says as fact. Molly gives her mother a sharp look, and Eilish looks away, thinking how Molly must have known something was wrong when nobody came to collect her from hockey, watching her teammates go one by one in the dusk until Miss Dunn saw her home. Her face as she came in the door, puce with rage, and later, as she fell silent. What had to be told to Mark and Molly that night, that there has been a roundup of key personnel from the union, that we are living in difficult times. They will have to let him go soon. You must remember your father hasn't done anything wrong. He is being subjected to intimidation by the government. But both of you need to be careful now. You cannot speak about this outside the house and cannot say a word to anybody at school. Seeing the terror in Molly's face, pleading with them to keep it a secret from Bailey, he is too young to understand. The girl's anger abating into silence, the bedroom door locked. Mark taking the news with some strange quality of reserve. A single question was all he asked. Why aren't they allowing him access to a solicitor? She keys the ignition, afraid for what lies must follow. Michael Given makes his calls house to house. It is not safe to discuss over the phone. She watches him stoop into the kitchen, almost sorry in his manner, the knitting of his yellowed fingers as he sits down. Listen, Ailish, there is talk they are going to move them. She has been absent from herself, watching the water jet into the kettle's mouth. She is holding her breath. She turns off the tap and places the kettle down. Move them where? The talk is of internment camps in the Curragh. What are you saying, Michael? That Larry is now a security risk? Michael Given seals his lips inward, his eyes widening like a surprised child. He nods towards the sink. You don't want to leave that thing resting in there, he says. She turns and sees the electric kettle in the sink. Aren't I some idiot, she says, shaking her head. She wipes the kettle dry and places it on the stand, looks again at Michael Given, seeing him yellow and insect before the table. They are lifting people from everywhere now, he says. The journalist, Philip Brophy, was taken. The NAP have some nerve. It has been all over the foreign news, but not a word said about it here. They are controlling the newsrooms now, though social media is alive with it. Michael, how can I even begin to explain this to the kids? That the state they live in has become a monster? She watches him until he makes a rueful shape with his mouth and turns away. Look at you lot, she says. The unions bowed and silent, and at least half the country in support of this carry-on and casting the teachers as villains. Something in Kuwait within her knowledge has spoken. She feels afraid. She can hear it now and speaks it silently to herself. All your life, you've been asleep. All of us sleeping. And now, the great waking begins. Come the morning, she stands by the front door calling Bailey down. She turns and sees herself true in the mirror, the pale and raddled face giving to the sunken eyes. For an instant, she sees the past held in the open gaze of the mirror, as though the mirror contains all it has seen, the mindless comings and goings throughout the years. Watching herself usher the children out to the car, and they are all ages before her, and Mark has lost another shoe, and Molly is refusing to wear a coat, and Larry is asking if they have their school bags, and she sees how happiness hides in the humdrum, how it abides in the everyday toing and froing, as though happiness were a thing that should not be seen, as though it were a note that cannot be heard until it sounds from the past. She calls for Bailey, and goes upstairs and finds he has locked the door. When the key turns, she pushes the door open and sees her son in the curtained gloom climbing into bed. She goes to the bed, pulls back the duvet, stands over him with her hands on her hips. Right, mister, you have 2 minutes to get dressed and into the car. It is then she meets the smell from the bed. Bailey tucking his legs towards his belly, and she can see the pyjama bottoms are sodden. She begins to pick up the clothes from the floor and speaks without looking at him. Go, undress and wash quickly. You are holding everybody up. Bailey moves towards the door, and she begins to strip the sheet from the bed, asking herself how many times this has happened since Larry has gone. She turns to see Bailey standing by the door with a look of whetted malevolence. He cries out at her. You sent him away, didn't you? That's what you did. You're nothing but an old bitch. She finds herself stopped with stuttering hands, her mouth quivering. Her eyes have dropped to watch her feet when she hears it fall from her mouth. The truth about his father. She is explaining the illegal arrest and detention, the efforts being made to get him before a judge. Her heart grows pained as she watches the boys' frowning disbelief, how his mouth slopes and then he buckles silently to the floor, wringing his arms about his knees. What she sees before her is an idea of order coming undone, the world slewing into a dark and foreign sea. She holds him in her arms, seeking in her whispers to rebuild for her son the old world of laws that lies broken at his feet. Molly is leaning in the door. "What's going on?" she says. "We're waiting outside in the car. We have to go to school." It is past 9 o'clock when she hears faint knocking on the door. Mark and Samantha are flopped on the couch, holding hands, their minds entwined with the screen. They barely look up when Carol Sexton droops past them with a faltering smile as she follows Ailish into the kitchen.